Hi everyone, I wish your day is fine. Here we are together again with the prisoner of Zenda. And today we will know what Rasendel's face made for him, if his similarity to the king made him better or worse in his journey. But before this, we should revise some questions about chapter 1. So here, if you finished reading chapter 1, you are ready to answer. Check the answers if your answers are right or not. What did Rudolph tell his family about his plans? Do you remember? He didn't tell them the truth. He told them that he would go for a walking tour in the Alps to write a book about the political and social problems of the area. And by the way, that was the best way for Robert and Rose that Rodolph is introducing himself to the political life. And this is the trick. He was going to Ruritania just to have fun and to see the coronation. Question number 2. What was the difference between Duke Michael and Rodolph the King? Do you remember the old woman and her two daughters' conversation with Rasendel? Yes, they said that Duke Michael lived in Ruritania all the time and all the people knew him well. But the king was almost a stranger because he had been abroad and he didn't live among the Ruritanians. Here we have another question. This is a very important part in your novel question in your exams. This is question of comment. There's a quotation, and after reading the quotation, you should write when was this quotation said, where, and who said this quotation to whom. So here we have a quotation. When in the world are you going to do anything, Rodolph? When in the world are you going to do anything, Rodolph? Do you remember this quotation? Okay. These words were said by Rose to Rodolph, and she said that because she wanted Rodolph to do a job instead of staying at home doing nothing just because he has a lot of money. But now, after revising these parts of chapter 1, we are ready to start with chapter 2. After we said that Juan, do you remember this name? The Duke's forest guard, Duke Michael's forest guard. So after Juan said that the king now is in the hunting lodge in the forest just to be ready to go to the coronation. So that was so exciting for Rasendel. Rasendel thought that he would see the king by just walking 10 miles through the forest. And of course, this is a great chance to see the king. This is a nice adventure, and Rasendel decided to do this. After he walked for an hour or more, he was so tired. So he went off into a very pleasant sleep. Suddenly, he felt that he was tired, so he slept under trees in the forest. And he didn't know that he was sleeping in the forest of Duke Michael's property. So here, after he suddenly slept and suddenly he opened his eyes, found two men talking at him with anger and surprise. And he heard them saying this sentence. He heard Zapt and Freds. Do you remember Zapt and Freds? They were two loyal guards for the king. He heard them talking and saying this sentence. He would be like the king. Oh my God, he just look like the king. He is exactly like the king. They were Colonel Zapt and Freds, the most loyal men for the king. And while they were talking to Rasendel, and they knew everything about him. He knew that he came out of Ruritania just to attend the coronation, and he didn't know anything about the king before that, and it's just a journey for him. While they were talking together, they heard the king's voice saying, Freds, Freds, where are you, man? He just was calling for friends. And suddenly the king appeared among them between the trees. And when just Rasindel looked at his face, when he looked at the king's face for the first time, he gave a cry of surprise. And he stepped back in a shock. They were as they were looking at the mirror. Rasindel realized right now that really he looked like the king. And then when the king found Rasindel, and when he noticed that there's someone else is standing with Zebt and Freds, and when he looked at his face, the king burst out laughing. He couldn't imagine that, oh my God, is there someone else have my face? And then after talking together, there was a strange reaction from the king. The king was a funny person. So after talking to Rasindel, the king invited Rasindel for dinner that night with them in the hunting lodge. They went together, 4 men went together to the hunting lodge just to celebrate and to have fun, to have dinner at the night of the coronation in the hunting lodge. When they arrived at the hunting lodge, there were just one servant, and another fat old woman, which was the mother of Juwan. It was a great dinner, and the king called for wine just to celebrate, and he drank a lot of bottles, a lot of bottles of wine. But Zebt came to remind him that, don't forget, the coronation is the next day, and you should be aware and active for the coronation. But the king refused to stop drinking, and suddenly the servant came with a grand old bottle of wine, and the king was so happy to see that bottle. The servant said that this is a special for the king. The king was so happy of that sentence, and he said that no one will share me with this bottle. And he would drink the bottle to the last drop, and that's what happened. He drank all the last bottle to the last drop alone, and no one shared it with them. And they slept suddenly because they drank a lot of wine. After drinking, they slept. And Rasindel found himself next day in the morning. Rasindel found himself awake and wet from head to foot. He didn't realize what happened for me. And when he opened his eyes, he discovered that Zebt and Freds threw a bucket of water over him to wake Rasindel up. And when he woke up, Zebt and Freds said to him, "There is no time to talk to you. Just look on the floor." And when he looked on the floor, he found the king lying on the floor. His face was as red as his hair, and he was breathing heavily and heavily. He was in a terrible case, and Rasindel was so afraid. What happened to the king? They were asking, what happened to the king? We were asleep. What happened to the king? And then Rasindel was thinking. Then he suggested that maybe the last bottle must have been drugged, and they must get a doctor. And Zebt said that it's too hard to get a doctor right now. We are on a long distance from the capital. It will take a long time to have a doctor here. It's hard to get a doctor and to wait and then to attend the coronation. And that is too hard to tell the Ruritanian people that the king is ill? Because all people know that the king was drinking all the time and he loves wine too much. So if we told them that the king is ill, all Ruritanians will know that the king is not ill. He was drinking a lot. So they would feel that he's not responsible, and that's too bad for the king. Then they thought and thought, they were thinking, Zapt suggested that Black Michael is the person who drugged the king. He sent him a drugged bottle of wine to prevent him from coming to be crowned and to be the king. If the king didn't attend the coronation, of course, Black Michael will be the king. As if Radel the fifth is not crowned today, Michael would take the place and he will be the king of Ruritania. And while Zapt was talking, he looked at Rassendyll and he was thinking, and suddenly Zapt said to Rassendyll that chance sent you here, chance sent you to Sturslow. And he asked Rassendyll to do the strangest thing in his life. He offered to Rassendyll a very strange plan. He asked Rassendyll to save the throne for the king and to attend the coronation instead of the real king until he's better. Oh my God, this is a great risk. He asked Rassendyll to attend the coronation instead of the king, because if he didn't go, Duke Michael will take the throne, will take Ruritania, and he will not take care of the Ruritanian people. And if he refused, if Rassendyll refused, the king will be killed, or he will be in the prison. He will be killed and put in the grave for all his life, or he will be in prison. Rassendyll was shocked. He was shocked because of that offer. He was thinking deeply, and Zapt supported him, and he reminded him that he had the chance to save the throne for the king. And after a lot of thinking, Rassendyll said, okay, I will go to save the throne for the king. And from that moment, everything changed in Rassendyll and the king's life. By the way, if you want to know what changed in their life and how did Rassendyll act as a king for the first time in his life, and how he deal in that plan, wait for chapter 3. But before that, there are some questions just to check if you remember what happened in chapter 2 or not. Read silently and answer these questions. And by the way, there are some questions that need your reading. So here, you can start reading chapter 2 from page 13 to 19 to find out the answers. So, question number 1. Why did Rassendyll walk for 16 kilometers in the forest? Number 2. Who woke Rassendyll up? Do you remember when he was sleeping in the forest? Who woke Rassendyll up? Number 3. What did Colonel Zapt ask Rassendyll to do in the hunting lodge when they found that the king was lying on the floor? And what would happen if he refused this offer? Number 4. How did Rasindel find the king when he woke up? Do you remember? Was he in a good case or bad? Last question. Comment. Come man, you don't meet a new brother every day. Just guess who said this quotation to whom, when and where. You will not be sure about your answer. If not, you read the chapter. You need to read the chapter to be sure about your answer. At this point, we can say that we finished this session. I wish everything is clear for you. Next time, wait for me, and I'm waiting for you.